Hey Tan, what's going on?
What's up,
Thanks.
bro?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thanks once again for agreeing to be the spotlight for volume 2 of the We All We Got newsletter. I definitely wanted you to be the next spotlight because for those that are watching this, Tan was actually the one that came to me with the idea to collaborate on a newsletter. So I thought it was only right that we allowed him to uh, have this opportunity. And so, 10, we're going to get into 7 questions to get to know you a bit better. Okay. How does that sound to you?
That sounds fire. Let's do it.
Okay. So, let's start with you growing up. So, tell us about 10 growing up. And I call you 10, so feel free to
Yeah,
clarify where that comes from. Tell
yeah,
me about 10 growing up and how does he differ from 10 now? And how are you the same?
sure. 10. So Tennyson is my name. I'm a little under the weather, so I sound a little crazy right now. But yeah, Tennyson is my name, and I was named after my great grandfather on my mom's side. Um, and yeah, I grew up, born and raised in DC, and went to high school in Maryland. Graduated from high school in Maryland. Um, Kind of like you, a church boy,
Yeah.
like devout, like crazy devout. Um, I wasn't like a preacher or anything like that, but I'm technically kind of like a PK. My grandmother is a minister,
Mhm.
um, and I was just in church all the time growing up. Um, I remember, uh, did I cut out?
No, I think you're
Okay,
good.
cool. So growing up, we would go to every year we would go to Florida for like this church camp. Like that's how, strict we were with it. And it would be church like 3 times a day for a week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, sometimes 2 weeks. But growing up, you don't know outside of your lens. So
Yeah.
for me, that was, I enjoyed it at the time. I think how I would to answer your question about who I was, I was kind of quiet, shy, or people say shy, and it's like you're not shy. But there's people that know me.
Yeah.
I would say reserved at first. I'm very like measured in getting to know people. I was always like that as a kid. I'm still that way. I think
Mhm.
the difference is um, I push myself as an adult to check my just the things that my weak points, right? Like if that could be considered a weak point,
Yeah.
because you can kind of block a lot of your blessings by you know closed mouths don't get fed type
Yeah,
shit,
that's
right?
true.
So
Yeah.
um, I was very studious. I would get straight A's. I would get in trouble for getting B's actually. I have
Oh my
very
goodness.
like I'm the oldest. I was the only boy for most of my life. I didn't have a brother until I was 17.
Oh,
Um and so that with that came a lot of like you're the man of the house. My parents weren't together. Um and I just had to be there was a certain level of like perfectionism that was ingrained into me as a child. And so I saw my worth in, achieving, whether that was academically, I did a lot of extracurriculars, um, music, art, a lot of those things. And yeah, I would say I'm working on my perfectionism right now. That's another way that I'm growing as a person. And that's something I'm trying to change about who I was conditioned to be, or maybe that's also a little bit in my nature to who I am now. Because
yeah.
again, that also holds me back from opportunities because that perfectionism sometimes makes me afraid of looking inept,
Yeah.
you know?
I get that. Yeah, well, this is self-awareness for me. I can definitely relate to that. And I think, realizing or understanding that perfection doesn't exist, then that authenticity is better than perfection. So kudos to you on that.
Thank you.
But 10, you're also a musician. And
Yeah.
so I want to talk about that and find out what was it that sparked your love for music and how has this love evolved over time?
Yeah, going back to my childhood days, that's where it all really went for me. I think my first foray with music, or where it really started for me, was church. Um, growing up in a Pentecostal, in a Black church, music is part of the culture. Um, and I was on the praise team. I was always in the choir. And I always tell this story too. So I don't remember how old I was, but my mom, I was pretty young, and it was like a Saturday night before church. I'll never forget. My mom made me and my three younger sisters come in her room and learn a song. And she taught us all different voice parts, and we were learning how to harmonize. And I remember being upset because I wanted to watch Cartoon Network. I was watching cartoon or whatever, like the new episodes that they would have on the weekends.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what I wanted to be doing. But she was kind of setting a foundation for us. And then in grade school, I did choir as well. I did the vocal ensemble. I did jazz band. I was in the dance company for a little bit. So I'm just it's. I was watching the Pharrell movie the other day, Piece by Piece, where he talked about just this sensation that you get from music. Like he would see colors in his mind's eye. For me, it was more of like I've always felt like when I feel tapped in artistically and especially musically, that to me feels like the closest thing to like transmuting or translating God, if that makes sense. Like
I love that.
there's been more. I had a moment one time when I was in church, singing with my family. We did like a special on a concert night, and I don't know what happened, but it was just like something took over my body, and there's everybody's like started, you know, hyping me up.
Yeah.
But it was like almost like this weightless feeling. And then I would notice when I would get on stage, I did talent shows and stuff. It was just like an alien or something was taking over my body. Um, so my love for music goes back to just really my love for at a young age, discovering myself on stage. I feel like music now, excuse me, I feel like music now is more of a side quest for me. Um, with life happening and having a job and a career, and coming up in the recession era. I graduated high school in 2012. Whatever you did for college or whatever you did after you graduated high school kind of had to make sense economically. And so music, I didn't go straight into that just because I felt like it didn't make it. I wanted some type of stability, but I didn't want to lose. I never wanted it to lose that special place. Whereas I feel like if it became work,
Mhm.
I would get annoyed by it, if that makes
I
sense.
get that. Yeah.
So yeah, it's funny you call me a musician. Sometimes I don't see myself as that. It's more of like a hobby that I really enjoy, that I like to share with people. Um, but yeah, I feel like that was long-winded, so I'll leave it there.
Well, I know that journalism is a big part of your day job and that you've been
Yeah,
involved in that for a while. So, what has like working in journalism taught you about yourself and the
yeah.
world and how you just move through the world?
It is working in journalism is probably the single biggest growth point for me, or catalyst for growth. And I say that because I'm learning so much about the world around me through other people's experiences that one, it always has me checking my bias at the door. Like I'm not one of those journalists who's like, you know, turn off your bias, be objective completely, because I don't know if that's humanly possible. Like I feel like you would have to be a robot or AI. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get it.
But I am someone who's like, I'm gonna share what my bias is, or I'm gonna be transparent about that. And so, with that said, journalism helps me to check my biases and my worldview. But it also makes me, um, in a way, defend my standpoints as well, because it's like, okay, there's a lot of research that goes into journalism, right? And so, if you say something is true, you got to be able to back it up. And for me, with my belief system, if I believe things, I'm always in my head about like, all right, why do I believe this? Is this actually true? What's
Mhm.
the evidence? So it's
Yeah.
definitely given me perspective on life. I had a mentor who once said that my career has been like journalism or self discovery through journalism because I've written different op-eds from time to time. You
Okay.
kind of got me back into writing about myself a little bit on
Just a little.
Substack. um, but I've also found that by sharing my voice and my experiences and my perspective, that people enjoy to hear from it when I really take the time to be vulnerable and authentic. And so it's helped me find my voice as a person, as an adult, and yeah, I was kind of leave it at that because I
Yeah.
could ramble on and on, but it also keeps me connected with the community,
Yeah.
whether that's the local community or the global community. Journalism makes me have to stay tapped in, and it's days like the world that we're living in right now where you want to kind of turn away, um,
Yeah.
and you don't want to see the news or you don't want to hear the news or hear about all the terrible things that are happening. But um, there's something about, I got to be careful how I say this because I don't want it to be conflated with the actual, like, there's a group called Red Pill Dudes or whatever.
Mhm. Yeah, I know.
And
Yeah, I know what you're referring to.
I'm not talking about them,
Yeah.
but the idea of red pill, blue pill, right? Like, whereas the blue pill is more bliss, red pill is like giving you life plain. I think sometimes there's space for that we need. I think we need to sometimes have a reality check. And so I feel like my career forces me to reconcile what is illusion and what is real, and that helps me just navigate my life and understand what I can and can't control at the end of the day. That's where I find my peace when it comes to everything that's going on around me. Is like, yeah, crazy things are happening, but I can also have my peace of mind as well. Over
Yeah.
here doing what I'm
Absolutely.
doing, I can have a little bit of bliss. I can turn it off and then turn it back on when I need to.
Yeah. Okay. Well, now that we talk about peace, right? I want to find out what are some of the things in your life that bring you joy? Working in journalism and being tapped in and hearing all these different stories, and I can imagine in a way, dealing with a lot of heavy emotions, going in and out from your career, but
Yeah,
also like your personal life and everything that's going on in that regard. So, what are some of the things that bring you joy as a person?
beauty brings me joy. I love beautiful people and being surrounded by them and fellowship, uh, camaraderie. I love the beauty of art and nature. I love the beauty of, as crazy as life is, like as crazy as it is to be alive, like to really think about like the odds,
Yeah, the probability of it all.
the probability of like you're the one that is alive, right?
Yeah.
There's beauty in being able to be grateful. I think when I'm able to have agency and feel agency, um, it increases the likelihood of me feeling gratitude. And feeling gratitude and being grateful brings me joy. because it's saying like no matter what is going on in life, I can still find moments or the glimmers of hope, the glimmers of love, the glimmers of beauty. Um, so what brings me joy is it doesn't take a lot actually. It's the little things. It's someone checking in and saying, "Hey, been thinking about you."
Yeah.
It's reading a killer paragraph in a book, whether that's a memoir or a novel, and being like, "Wow, like the way they wrote that, I wish I could have thought of
Okay.
that."
Relatable.
You know what I'm saying? Um, I think what we've been doing with We All We Got, just like I love seeing queer Black folks, especially men, and male identified folks, being able to express love, joy, camaraderie, all of that in a safe environment, in a judgment free space. Um, people always say like, why do we still need pride? Why do we still need pride? And we see why now.
Right.
But like, you know, I, I think about going to Black Pride last year in Philly and going to the block party and
Mhm.
just seeing everybody out on display. I'm saying on display, but just everybody out like living in the moment, being present and openly and free to do so. Like, that's progress. Like it's so easy to get caught up in the moment and be like, we're losing things. But the reality is we've also made a lot of progress over the centuries and centuries or millennia or millions
Yeah.
of years or whatever that we've been on this planet.
Yeah. I
Um,
agree. Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's really all about perspective, right? Because you can look at a situation and look at the downsides, but you can also look at the pluses. So yeah, I mean, I think it's valid to recognize that we have a long way to go, but we've also come a long way, right?
yeah.
So that's thank you for saying that and for illuminating that. Tan, I'm curious. What is something about yourself that you believe that people might be shocked to know?
Uh, somebody, I was actually out the other night in New York and somebody asked me that. And I think the way that I answered it was me being like trying to put myself in someone else's shoes based on what people tell me from time to time. So me aggregating different people's reactions to my persona or the mask, I should say. They asked me that, and I was like, I guess that I can nerd out, or
Okay.
that I'm really in my thoughts, and that you know, I like to consider myself intellectually minded. And so I'm always thinking about how things work and just how to be better. And it's funny, like this person I'm telling you about that I like ran into the other day in New York. They were like, "Yeah, tell me something. Like, what's something people wouldn't notice about you right away?" And I'm like, "Wow, that's a crazy question to ask somebody at a bar."
Yeah.
Like, and he said once you started talking, he was like, "I could tell you're very smart." And so I think that's something that people just looking at me may not like gather, which, you know, I don't know why I would say that about myself.
Yeah. No, I get what you mean though. I understand what you mean.
But I try not to come too uppity to
Yeah.
spaces. Like I try to like I love street fashion.
Mhm.
I love just the village. I love the community, and yes, I, am consider myself well educated, but I try not to appear too up here. And so,
Yeah.
sometimes because I can give off, well, it depends on who you ask. Sometimes some people I give off an inviting demeanor. Some people is like they want me to speak to them. I think that's another thing too. I'm very passive, actually. I think people when they see me, they see this like tough exterior. They want me to go out of my way sometimes to like interact and things like that. Sometimes I want people to say what's up to me,
Yeah,
um,
that's valid.
which I don't get a lot. Like, is a lot of times if I'm out and wanting to make new friends or make new contacts, it's like people expect me to make the first move, and I like to be, I like to be wooed sometimes.
Okay, yeah, we all deserve to be wooed, you know what I mean? So hopefully this spotlight kind of provides some more insight into that, and maybe someone who's
Potentially,
watching will decide to woo you, you know?
this and this might sound crazy. The reason I really like have thought about that a lot recently because I did ancestry.com many years ago. And now they're using your DNA for stuff that you didn't know they were going to use it for, but they can like read, they can like predict traits that you likely have. So they can say like your eye color is brown, your hair color is black, your skin tone is likely darker, you're melanated. But they also can predict traits that are less physical,
Okay.
more intangible. So like one of them was leadership. Are you someone who is likely to take the lead or prefers others to take the lead? As somebody my entire life, like I said, grew up in church, grew up just being pushed to be a leader. I've always like forced myself to lead
Yeah.
or saw myself as a leader and have been. But I was shocked to see that it said that my natural tendency is probably to preferring other people to take the lead. And that can feel in our society almost emasculating because it's like we expect men to take the lead on things like that's just how what's ingrained in us. um but making peace with that, like actually first being like, okay, is this true? Like, yes, the science says this, but they could be wrong. They're still understanding the science behind DNA. So like taking it with a little bit of a grain of salt, but also saying like, all right, let me explore like if this is true, how can I honor my natural tendency to prefer to be led, you know, in a world where all I've ever known is me trying to take the lead. Um, so that's been a fun little journey. I'm still finding that balance, but um, yeah, I'll leave
I
it
can
there.
see that. Well, I'm proud of you, especially in a world that prioritizes or tries to eliminate masculinity. It's important for us to deconstruct what that is, society's version of it, and what it means for us. So kudos to you for that. Um, Ten, as we're wrapping up here, I want to ask you another question that's related to music, and I want to know if you could collaborate with any artist, whether they're living or not. Like, who would it be? Who would y'all
Yeah,
create, and like, why that person?
I know. So this is the hardest question actually for me to think about. I had a whole list in my head of like, I'm like, all right, Duckworth, Frank Ocean, Willow Smith, Kate Trinata,
Oh, okay.
Victoria Monet. Um, these are all people that are alive. And these are more like pop, pretty mainstream people, but just even thinking about like the alternative route, like Steve Lacy, um, people like Tom Misch, Jordan Ward, Jordan Rakai, that like soul, but like indie soul vibe. Um, but the way I really look at this question, or like from a standpoint of like who would I really want to learn from, maybe not necessarily have to collaborate and put a project out, but who I would like love to learn from would be Stevie Wonder. Like I would love to take like music lessons from Stevie Wonder,
Yeah.
like actually sit at the piano and just pick his brain because I grew up, I learned how to play the piano growing up. It's been really cool to have a virtuoso like that, just you know, being in my ear and letting me know the mistakes I'm making. And
Yeah, true.
because I consider him to be probably, if not the greatest, one of the greatest musicians of all time. I think he's really the North Star for a lot of the artists that are out today,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yesterday, and to
Yeah.
come. You
Yeah.
know,
We love Stevie. We
yeah,
love Stevie
I
details.
saw Stevie last October.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a great concert. I was in there with all the aunties. It was so
I
fun.
know that's right.
It was so fun. And, you know, bring back concerts where like I was pretty much like 3 rows from the floor, and
Yeah.
I don't think I paid more than $80.
Come on.
Like,
You had yourself a time.
but bring back where you can actually afford to see somebody, you know, and not break the bank.
Yeah.
If Stevie Wonder can do it, I'm looking at you, Beyonce. Even
Well,
though
that's too funny.
yeah, I spent a pretty penny on Cowboy Carter because I've never seen Beyonce on tour. I saw her at Obama's inauguration, the
Yeah.
first one, but that was like one song. Um, so I'm excited. I'm excited for that. Obviously, I would love to work with her too, or learn from her as well. Um, you know, but yeah,
Okay. Yeah, that would be super dope. Well, Tan, as we're to the end of the interview, I would like to know, for those of us that are watching this, myself, what words of wisdom or advice or like what's on your heart that you just want to share for us and for the community members as we watch this and just kind of go forward in our lives, our day-to-day lives.
yeah. Words of wisdom. I don't know shit. You know, I'm trying to like actually like I do know things, but
Yeah,
and take those lessons with me. But I just feel like the older I get, the more I'm just in this cycle of just re-questioning everything that I know to be true or believe to be true. Um, you know, and just having the humility to understand that my knowledge is finite, right? I know that might not sit well with some of the spiritual gurus out there, but you know, I think that there's just a certain level of humility in knowing that I don't know everything, I won't know everything, and I'm gonna die not knowing things.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Um, how do we build a society based off of like that thought and feeling while also looking out for each other is something that I'm always interested in pursuing and just thinking about.
yeah. I appreciate that. And I think that's why doing something like this is so important because, none of us know everything, but I think that's the beauty and community of taking my strengths and your strengths and their strengths and kind of putting it all together. So definitely, I do appreciate all of the knowledge that you've given to me, even in this process of putting together the newsletter and analytics and things like that, because that's something that I didn't know about that you did. And so I think, even in your quest of continuing to learn, we do value you still being willing to share your story and kind of share your perspectives and everything like that. So thank
I
you so
appreciate
much.
you. Yeah, it's mutual for sure.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Tin. I enjoy talking to you as always, and enjoy the rest of your week, my friend.
You too.
All right, thanks.